Master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisance unto him. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
So before we start, Sankalpa Devi Dasi Hare Krishna, thank you for the request to do some drama presentation for the youngsters over there. Just let us know.
We will meet with one of the other organizers, Vaishnavi and Lileshwari, and we will meet on probably on the weekend and see how we best can go about it. And yeah.
Well, at least I can do something. I can do my charades, and additionally, we have Parikshit. He's like a graduate of the Bhaktivedanta Academy in Vrindavan. He's got a lot of background in voice exercise, and he can make it very fun. He can do character study for older kids. You know, he's a bit trained. And then we have a brahmachari who's got a background in dance and movement. He does yoga, and also he does ballet and some modern moves, things like that. So it can be very fun for the kids.
Yeah, that sounds really very, like there's a lot to offer.
At the very minimum, I can certainly do something. You know, I can do something by charading out a story like I've done in the past.
Yeah.
So I guess we can get started. And we can get started with chapter 2. Last week, we actually spent the bulk of our time talking a bit about Bhaktimarga Swami and whatever I could say in his honor. And then we just started talking about chapter 2 from the Gita, contents of the Gita summarized. So I was just thinking it might be nice if you propose want to take notes, be ready. I've got a pen in my hand. I'm ready to take notes. And I'm going to go through the chapter, and I'm going to group them in certain ways, because there are some strings of verses that have themes, and so we're going to try to do that for you. Lump some of the verses together because they carry certain themes, so we can highlight some, because this is a small group, right? So if anybody has any questions along the way, you can simply let me know. All right, so we'll start with the first verse. The first verse addresses Arjun's compassion, and he's showing his soft-heartedness by tears, demonstration of tears. As we see, full of compassion, he's depressed. He's basically depressed or stressed out, as many people use in modern day terms. Level of distress for Arjun is extremely high. And because Krishna sees this, he feels it's unfit for a Kshatriya. So then, moving along to chapter 2, where it is, text 2, where it starts off with Sri Bhagavana Vacha. We're going to see that word coming up quite a bit. Bhagavan, quite a lot. And here we can see Krishna starts to chastise. He starts to get a little bit firm with Arjuna. He's just saying, this does not become you. This is not appropriate for a Kshatriya, and especially a man who knows the values of life, because Arjuna is a well-trained man in the science of the Bhagavad philosophy, and Krishna expects more out of him. And he's saying that if you carry on like this, it's going to take you to darker places, and it will not take you to the heavenly planets, which is what is due for those who fight on the battlefield and come away from the battlefield, dead or alive. That's what he is implying here. So from text 3 to 6, we see Arjuna is demonstrating his confusion. Text 3, 4, 5, and 6, by saying such things as, it's better if I become a beggar, and then not take up the role as a Kshatriya at all, as the warrior, rather to become more of a sadhu, a beggar type, an ascetic. He expresses his confusion by saying, I'm not sure anymore. I'm not sure if it's better to be conquered, which would be the case if he became a beggar, or if we conquered. I just don't see any good, any which way that I go, in any direction. So that his confusion becomes very evident from 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then number 7 is really a turning point. This is kind of a famous verse for us. And because Arjuna makes a change. Karpanya dosho bhata swabhava. Dosha refers to weakness. I admit my weaknesses. That word dosha also appears in the Bhagavatam. Kaler dosha nidiraja. Some of you might be familiar with it. Dosha refers to weakness. Kaler dosha means the age in which we live. Kali, kaler. It is full of faults, but the one good thing is the Harinam, that famous verse is there. The reason why we say this is a turning point in the Bhagavad Gita is because Arjun admits to his weakness, but he does something else with it, with his weakness. He's seeing that Krishna is strong. He said, I want that strength. I want firmness. And for me to get there, I know I have to surrender. I know I have to be your disciple, your shishya. So from that remark, Krishna actually pulls out a smile. He starts smiling. Arjun's weak. He's hit rock bottom, but Krishna is smiling. That doesn't mean to say that Krishna is a sadist or a sadistic person. It means that Krishna sees that Arjuna is taking a step in the right direction. He's on the way to Krishna. Prabhupada wrote that little book, On the Way to Krishna. Anybody who is on the way to Krishna, they're going somewhere. They're taking baby steps, perhaps, but they're getting there. Even yesterday, in the Krishna book, some of us were reading how some people who eat meat, yet they are called Vedic, they follow Karma Kanda, that they are on the way to Krishna in the sense that they recognize this Vedic deity, the goddess, and they are admitting to their own, that I'm insignificant, this goddess who's part of the Vedic family is greater than I am. They're admitting to humility, and they're approaching her with humility, even though it's with a goat. So they're taking, like, we cannot, sometimes as devotees, we are quick to criticize, but we don't have to. We can understand that these people they have some devotion, and it just takes a little bit of talking to them about how, well, Krishna can give you so much more. So why not take to the path of Krishna bhakti as opposed to other forms of bhakti? So that word shishya is very important, to accept that I will take instructions. This is where I am at. And so some shadi refers to instruct me. I'm ready to go. And prapanam, the last word in verse number 7, also suggests that we're talking about surrender. So 7 to 10, verses 7 to 10, are totally about surrender. And Arjun's describing some of his symptoms of weakness. I'm drying up. My senses are have become useless. I am. Sanjay speaks on behalf of Krishna here. Says, finally, Krishna says, "I shall not fight. I'm just not going to go through with this war." That might indicate that he hasn't fully surrendered, but the fact that he is taking a position to put down his bow, and I'm going to listen now. I'm going to listen to what you have to say to me, oh my Lord. And from that, Arjun gets benefit. So as mentioned here in text 10, Arjun is grief-stricken, and we're going to be seeing what Krishna says about grieving in text 11 to 13. Krishna repeats the same phrase practically. It says, you don't need to grieve. There's no point in this. There's at least, let me see. There's about 4 times, if not 5 times, where Krishna suggests you don't need to lament. There's no need to grieve. So out of these verses, starting with text 12, we get Krishna's first lessons, okay? So first of all, he says something that you could almost take like a sutra. It's almost like one of those famous quotes. And here it is. Natrevaham jatu nasham natum neme janadi pa nachaivana bhavisham sarve vayam atapuram. In English, we can understand it a little better. And it's really a very profound statement. Okay, never was there a time that I did not exist, nor you, nor all kings in the future shall any of us cease to be. So you could replace those words in a modern day context. If it's not kings, it's corporate office workers, whatever. We're existing, we all will exist, and we are here now. This is the first hint at the topic of transmigration of the soul. So that is significant. And then a verse that many of us are familiar with, it becomes a little bit more clear, the notion of transmigration. From the famous verse, Denosmin yata dehe, komaram yovanam jara, tata dehantara praptir, dirastatra namuyati. So it is said here that the embodied soul travels from boyhood to youth to old age. So in a modern day context, komaram can refer to a girl too. We can't limit this to boys, but it's to girls as well. And we have to make a statement about that these days, so we can be in the PC category, politically correct. All right, so from childhood to youthhood, yovanam to jara. Jara means old age. We just take birth again and start all over again. And a person who understands this should not lament. There's no need to be in a sense of pity. You just carry on because you don't change. You know, that's the argument Krishna gives to Arjun. What's the point? You change, whether you change or you don't, the body changes, but you don't change. And even if the body does change, which it does, so what's the big deal? It's like changing one's clothes. Another famous verse, which is really sweet, is the next one, text 14, and it addresses tolerance. So I'd say 14, 15, and 16 run together. The theme here is tolerance. So we see Matra Sparshastakondya, Shitoshna Sukadukada. When we first opened up our restaurant in Toronto back in the late 70s, we called it the Hare Krishna restaurant. And it was just on Avenue Road down the street from the temple. And we decided to bring him some live music. Some young men, they had formed a jazz blues band, and they didn't have a name. So one of our devotees said, well, why don't you call it the Sukaduka Band? That was pulled right out of this verse, text 14. And it is an appropriate sound. Sounds pretty snazzy and jazzy, I must say. Good idea, good imagery here. Happiness and distress are compared to winter and summer seasons. You have these two extremes. Now, I live in Canada. You might think it's a cold place, but we're going through, getting close to, we're in the 90s Fahrenheit. And it's hot. We've gone through a hot spell, and it's going to continue for a bit. But then we also get our cold weather, as you know. It's quite extreme. But as Canadians, we learn to get tough, and it builds character when you have that change of weather. So tolerance is an important virtue. If you're going to be learning, like Arjun is admitting to his being a student, while being a student, the way to learn is that you have to be very tolerant. You sit in a square room, like what's quite traditional, especially old English fashioned square room with square desks and square teachers sometimes. And your mind might drift off somewhere. So one has to really, if you want to benefit in the end, you must be a good listener, and you must learn to tolerate without being disturbed. So Arjun is sitting on his chariot, that's his classroom, and he's got the best teacher. And there's a potential for many, many students to be there, but it's just one student. So it's totally one-on-one. You can't get better than that. So text 15, as we mentioned, that also the term or theme of tolerance fits in very nice. O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. So Krishna is saying that out of the virtue of tolerance comes a great reward, and that is freedom, or what we call moksha, freedom from the cycle of birth and death. 16, also in the same category of tolerance. This is a nice verse, I love it. Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha. Ubayora apitishtruntas, tonyas tattvadarshibhi. So those who are seers of the truth have made an observation, and that the material body has a beginning, it has an end. There's no real endurance. So that's the nature of material energy. Spiritual energy is a little different. There is no change, there's no beginning, there's no end. And if you study the nature of both, you become somewhat enlightened. And so this tolerance comes from truth. And certainly for truth to set into our psyche, we have to be tolerant. Okay. So now we're going to go through some verses that are really interesting because they give us, let's say, descriptions of what is the soul. Adjectives maybe, but at least descriptions or explanations, qualities to the soul. Look at text 17. It starts with 17 and it goes to 25. So now that Krishna said to Arjuna, well, you are eternal. What does that mean in terms of the physical body? Indestructible. See, that's what's there. Indestructible is the first descriptive word. In 18, let's flip over to 18. We have another word, and it's just so we've got indestructible already, mentioned 17. Now immeasurable. Immeasurable, that's the new word. Let's go to 19. Does not get slain, or cannot be killed. It's almost like indestructible, but I think it gives a little more detail. Slain means man to man, right? You can be destroyed. You can be. People always talk about being run over by the bus, but and you can say that then you're destroyed. But if you say you cannot be killed by another man, that's in reference more to having to do with slaying or killing. It's just a little more specific. Let's look at 20. What's the new word that comes up here that we can honor? Let's see. Number 20. Not killed, no birth, no death. Is unborn. Unborn. What's the new word? Primeval. Okay. I think we can take any of those words and put them in our list of descriptions of what is the soul. 21. No change. There's no change. Destructible. Immutable. Okay. Let's call it immutable then. Okay. That's a new word that we can add to our list. 22. A very vivid description of what this simply means. You change your bodies just like you change your clothing, but you don't change, you know. So the word we can highlight here is, again, no change or unchangeable. That's a prominent word that Krishna applies to himself. I don't change. I don't change. Then text 23, the soul cannot be cut. In 23 it said, cannot be drowned, or cannot be waterlogged. You know, and that's another way of putting it. And then cannot be dried, by the wind. So these are very pointed descriptions of what the soul is, and how the soul fights, it persists, despite whatever you do to the body, the soul continues on. Okay, so then we'll go to 24, and what word here? All pervade. That's let's see. I'm looking for the word. Present everywhere. See that present everywhere? That's interesting, because just like I can look at you in the frames and I can see there's 2 souls, 3 souls, 4 souls, and all that. So the souls are everywhere. And it's not that I, as an individual, exist on my own, but there's a presence of jivas all around me. So this is another quality, a presence of souls, all pervasive. We can use that term, all pervasive. And again, we see that word unchangeable. So text 25, a new word that appears there. And if anybody wants to say, what's a new word that's in there? There's a couple of new words in there.
Inconceivable.
Yes, inconceivable, good. And also I would say invisible. Invisible, that it's not with the naked eye, we can't see the soul. We can understand its presence through various symptoms, but we cannot see the construction of the soul with these eyes, these present eyes. It's not known. So invisible, inconceivable, hard to comprehend. Immutable is a term that's already been used. So what I'm getting at here is the terminologies that would that are adjectives to the qualities to the soul. So if you add them up, you've got quite a few. If I look at it very, very quickly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. There's about 15 qualities to the soul, perhaps a little bit more. Okay, so that's significant. If you talk to a person who believes in God and believes in the spirit, the Atma or the Jiva, you ask them, tell me some of the qualities of the soul. I don't think they can tell you very much, but there's quite a stock of information here, just running through these few verses. Let's flip over to 26 now. If, however, you think that the soul will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, Almighty Armed. So what, looking at verses 26 through to 30, the term lament comes up. Shochitam and Arhasi, the last two words in this particular shloka 26. You do not need to lament. That's what's implied. Na enam shuchitam arhasi. You do not need to lament for the reasons mentioned above. You always are existing. So why are you crying? Why this self-pity? Text 27. Again, you see Krishna's using the technique of, let's say, humbling Arjuna, which the teacher sometimes has to do. It says, why are you behaving like this? This is not suitable. Why are you grieving? Krishna is saying your emotions are improperly placed. The wrong emotions have flared up. Krishna, we'll hear about it a little later on, said rather you should get quite excited. You should be think like a Kshatriya. Opportunity is here. Opportunity to make change in the world. Okay, so text 27. Looking at the last phrase again. Na tvang shuchitam arhasi. See, it's repeated again. Do not lament. Do not grieve. And why? Because death is sure to come. Please take special note of 27, because it's another one of those verses that very strongly endorses the soul's transmigration. This is another verse that underscores reincarnation. So, jatasya hidruva mrityur. So, mrityur refers to death, correct? And then janma follows. Dhruvam janma mritasya. What follows death is birth. And what follows birth is death. Mritasya. And it goes on. The cycle of birth and death is outlined here. So since you're going to die anyway and be born again, so what's the big deal? Why get all emotional? So again, when Krishna repeats something several times, why lament? It means that he's putting strong emphasis, and that it means that our skull is kind of thick and we're not listening. So he has to say it again and again and again. Okay. So text 28. All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest when annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? So again, the point about being in the world, being manifest, and then, kind of dissolving, going through dissolution, and then being, let's say, unwound again. The point is the same. You're here, you're gone, you're here, you're back again. So So what is the need for the lamentation again? Said in slightly different language here. Paridivana, lamentation. No need for it. No need to lament. So, okay. And again, I'd like to say something we mentioned last week, Bharata. Bharata refers to, you're the descendant of Bharata. You know, you're coming from a great king, lineage of kings from your father's side. You know, would you want to cry before him? Would you want to, you know, where is your chivalry? Where is your Kshatriyaism? So like that. Don't cry. They say don't cry over spilled milk. Okay, so text 29, somewhat the same. I like this verse very much. Ascharyavat pashati kastid enam. This is in reference to people who have a look at the soul. They give it some consideration. But even after doing so, even after going through perhaps some speculation, as Prabhupada uses the term, or some introspection, one just dismisses it. Forget it. It's too difficult, it's too deep, or you know, I can't just be thinking about these things. I'll just toss myself into the world of karma kand or something like that. I'll go to my demigod worship, or I won't worship a god at all. I'll just go and have a night on the town. So then text 30, that would finalize the theme of lamenting. There's mentioned 5 times, don't lament, in these verses. He who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any living being. Notice the word again, bharat. You know, don't bring infamy to your family. Hold your head up high. Carry yourself. Move into the area of action. That's what Krishna's trying to imply. And now in 31, here it goes. Krishna's talking about, okay, now he's been saying Bharat, and he says Kunti, Kauntiya also, because from his mother's side, Arjuna came from that lineage of a great motherhood. Kunti was an outstanding Kshatriya woman, you can say. She went through so much pain and she bore it all. So like she was a real strong woman, like Kshatriyas are known to be. So here Krishna lays it on very thick and hard. It's like, come on, you're a Kshatriya. There's nothing better for you than fighting. Look for the opportunity. After all, Arjuna was building up for a long time, many years, while in exile, for this great moment. He was aspiring for this great moment to face the unruly Kauravas. Now it has come to him, and now he's proving himself to be squeamish, weak, you know, worthy of court-martial, you can say. So Krishna's saying, appealing to his Kshatriyism, said, come on, where's your honor? You know, Kshatriyas are known to fight on the basis of religious principles. The word dharmyat is there in text 31. You fight for the sake of dharma. It's not so much that the Pandavas were fighting for the sake of riches or for a position of power. They weren't really into that. Yudhishthira made it very clear. I'm not that interested. But Krishna wanted him to be there, and Yudhishthira, being the kind person that he was, okay, if that's what you want, my Lord, I'll be there. Okay. So instead of saying hesitating, of grieving, don't grieve, but just don't hesitate. We know that Yudhishthira had to take a glimpse of hell because he hesitated on a few occasions, especially when Krishna gave him some instruction. You should Yeah, he told him Ashwatthama is dead, and Yudhishthira was hesitating to say that. There was a little bit of a white lie there, and Yudhishthira being so pure, he didn't want to say Ashwatthama is dead, referring to the son of Drona, correct? And there was another personality with that same name, Ashwatthama, the name of an elephant. So Krishna just very, what should I, in this tricky way, asked Arjun to say out loud, Ashwatthama is dead, referring to the elephant. And so Yudhishthira was thinking that was a little bit crooked. And for his hesitating to say it, he had to see hell. So hesitation is not an attribute of the Kshatriyas. You could take in your notes 18. I was referred to 1843. There's no mention for Kshatriyas as to that being an attribute of being hesitating at a great opportunity. Okay, so again, talking about honor and dishonor, that's how we can sort of like put a subtitle to these verses. 31 right on up to 38. Krishna's appealing to Arjuna's.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah.
It's Mandala. I just had a question on regards to that hesitation point. Is it okay to ask now, or should I wait till later?
I think it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So we see that hesitation is not a good quality for the Kshatriyas, but even for us as being devotees, sometimes hesitation can be there, whether it's to, read your daily chapter or rounds, but also hesitation could be a benefit. Say if you, don't want to, you procrastinate a task that may be not so beneficial for one's devotional service. So with regards to that, how does that fall for the Vaishnavas? Hesitation, is that a dreadful quality, or can it also be used in Krishna's service?
Well, we can take it that you're on the battlefield, you don't have too much time to deliberate on things. You have to move and act very swift. And that's why Kshatriyas were trained. They were put in this, their lessons were all about when to strike, how to strike, and under what circumstances. So you just had to think extremely fast when you're on the battlefield. When Brahminical people, or let's say a regular devotee, sometimes has to sit back for a minute and think about what course of action to take. It's quite all right to do that deliberation and weigh out the consequences. And I'd say filter through the goodness, passion, and ignorance filters, go through those channels and consider what's best for me, long-term, short-term, middle-term. And so we need to take some time to do that. But there's also a right time to act. And when it's time to strike, like say you are driving, you are, the light goes green, you've parked at the intersection, you've stopped. And clearly it is said by the change of light that you're to move ahead, move forward. And if you don't, people will get on your case. You get all kinds of honks behind you, especially at rush hour when nobody rushes. So there's some space or opportunity for deliberation, but in many circumstances, you should have thought that over before. I'll give you a crude example, and I've seen it myself. I've initiated sometimes people are there, young couple, they get married, and then after the fact they say, well, we're not getting along because he wants a baby or she wants a baby and the other one doesn't. Well, didn't you guys discuss that beforehand? It's not a question right now. Why hesitate? So I would say a good part of training in the Vaishnava culture has a lot to do with preparation and thinking very swiftly and on the spur of the moment, especially in this case. And now, again, I'll bring back the point that Arjun had years to deliberate on this, right? It was 13 years. They were in exile, correct? 13 years. I know some people consider it inauspicious or not the lucky number, but that's what it was. It was 13 years. And so to hesitate now was quite inappropriate, wouldn't you say? It's very inappropriate. After 13 years of thinking this over, now suddenly you decide to do what? You're not going to go through with this. So you can understand Krishna's frustration that after all this lapse of time, you decide to say no to when you should say yes. So I hope that might touch on your concern.
No, that's perfect, Maharaj. That's really nice realizations. Thank you.
Yeah, like when you go to work, your daily work, you have to make, you're dealing with customers or clients usually. That's most people's, modus operandi. They have to deal with people, the public, and you have to think and act very fast, and it's based on experience. The point is that Arjuna, it's not the first time he's been in battles already. So that's why it's kind of astounding that suddenly just sort of backs off and hesitates altogether.
Guess I'm saying you got to be quick.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, that's right. If you want to survive in the world, you have to act quick. That's the point. Pronto. You have to move. Yeah. Okay, so we can go back there. Text 31. There's a strong message there that says, a warrior does not hesitate. 32. Krishna makes a point of the great opportunities that come from fighting on the basis of religious principles. The doors of the heavenly planets open up to you. If you do die, you go to higher places. You go to a better subdivision. You go into the nice suburbs of the universe. So that's something that might be the motivation for some Kshatriyas to go there. In text 33, Krishna brings up another point. He's saying, listen, if you don't go through with this, there will be pop. Pop means sin. Now that's the word that we should get very familiar with. Can I say something about the pop culture? The pop culture is basically a sinful culture, if I can say that. Our current culture in which we live. Pop also appears in the 18th chapter. Sarvadharman Vrijaja Mamikam Sharanam Vraja Ahang Tvang Sarva Papebhyo Mokshashami Mashicha. So sins will be relieved. And Kshatriyas are concerned about their future like anybody else, or they should be. So if you hesitate to engage in these great opportunities, then surely you will incur sin. Arjuna was thinking the other way. If we fight now, we fight against other family members, we will incur sin. That was quite clear in his delivery before this chapter. Okay, and so we're good. That's 33. And Krishna makes a point about it's not only that you'll incur sin, your reputation is at stake, right? You lose your reputation. Kirtim, reputation. And reputation means a lot. It means a lot. It's very, very important thing. That's why Krishna keeps saying, oh, Saina Bharat, oh, son of Kunti, reputation, it's important. Don't put shame to your family. Don't bring shame to yourself. and so on and so forth. So these particular issues or dynamics fall under the category of the honor and dishonor for a Kshatriya, a warrior. Okay, and text 34, people will talk, they'll start talking about you. And it's not that we won't have dishonor. When you look at Krishna Leela, the whole Canto 10, Krishna goes through a lot of reputational issues. Of course, they weren't people of the greatest character, but they were rabble rousers, and there were all kinds of people. And Shishupal was allowed to, hammer at Krishna's reputation so many times over and over again. And on the 100th mark, Krishna decided if he goes 100 times, then I'm going to let him have it. Enough is enough. But reputation for a Kshatriya, it actually means a lot. So therefore, dishonor, as we heard the saying, dishonor is worse than death for a Kshatriya. And that's why Kshatriyas go in the battle. They might not come back out. They may not come back out. There's a famous story out of India. I can't remember the name of the queen. She refused to have her husband come back because he came back from the battle and didn't have any scrapes, didn't have any injuries. So she was so ashamed of him, said she rejected him. She would let him come back into the building. Isn't that something? So you had to prove your manhood or your Kshatriyism by, if you didn't die, at least, and if you live, you got to come back with some scratches, something to show that you were involved in serious battle. Otherwise, people make a laughing stock out of it. So dishonor is worse than death. I think that is a very profound statement. And because most of us are not Kshatriyas, those who are discussing or listening here today, we have our own form of dishonor. You make vows, and people are kind of, I'd say these days, even amongst devotees, kind of shameless, changing marriages or quitting on each other. And in ancient times, that would be very dishonorable. And but we don't consider that so strong. It's a real strong feature of Kali Yuga that these kind of elements are there. They exist. So text 35, great generals, even your own people, Krishna's implying, great generals will see that you fear. And I made a note of the word logavam, 35, logavam, what's that verse? Yeah, lagavam, decreased in value. Right before your very eyes, you'll shrink in front of your superiors because of that you decided to go in reverse. And you'll probably never gain their trust again. You'll probably never regain their trust again. Once we're set up to take up the duty and responsibility, to take up that act, and to do something so dishonorable, they'll probably never want to see you again. They'll reject you. So Krishna's giving all these kind of warnings to Arjuna. Don't go through with this. Text 36. Okay, the generals will talk about you. That goes on both sides, and the enemy will certainly talk. They'll have a field day with you, like Duryodhana, for instance. The arch enemy. Oh, he'll take you to town on this one. He'll drag your name through the mud. And then, for emphasis, look at 36. Sometimes it's nice to have a question mark. I don't know how it translates into Sanskrit, but the last sentence there, what could be more painful for you? Instead of Krishna just kind of like lashing out with statements, then he asks the question. So Well, don't you think it's wrong? You know, do you really want to go through this? Do you realize that your decision is going to take you to a defamation? So do you really want to go through this with your decision? So Krishna's using this device of throwing a question out at him. Text 37, we're getting to the end of this theme here. If death, then, okay, well, I'll just read it out of Son of Kunti. Either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up with determination and fight. So here there was no option. You know, Krishna says there's no question. You have to go through with this, and whatever happens to you, it will be with dignity that you die, either way. But if somebody dies, you know, after having gone through court-martial or whatever, that is not a real death. That is living in hell, according to the Kshatriyas, right? I think that everybody can appreciate what a Kshatriya is made of, because we all have to take up a fight against the powers of Maya. And it's a good fight. And it is with determination that we must apply this fight. So determination, the word krita refers to determination. So many words that describe determination in this Bhagavad Gita. So the final verse to complete this particular theme: do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing, you shall never incur sin. So clarifying the point about sin, you're not going to incur sin if you go through with this, if you move ahead, and don't consider the result. So Krishna is warming up Arjuna here into the subject of going down the path of detachment. Do what you ought to do, and don't be attached to the fruits of or the results of your actions. The results are left in my hands. So we're going to be hearing a little bit more about working in detachment. Just looking at our time here, it's a little over 6 o'clock. So I know we started a little bit late, but I think this is a good point at which to stop. It brings us to about the middle of the chapter. There's a lot of good stuff there. Does anybody have any questions at all they'd like to bring up? By the way, somebody was kind enough from Vancouver to put a vintage picture on my mug. So this is my father, this is Mom, that is my sister Connie, and that's me. I guess I'm 2 years old with a little sailor suit on. This came to me yesterday.
They know. They know. See the Transmigration.
I also have to say I'm proud of my family, because my father was very dharmic. My mom had some physical issues, but she was very much like the proper mom. She did the best she could. And in that sense, you know, just the point about family, since it's quite obvious, it keeps being brought up by Krishna through the parlance, through the nomenclature that he uses, by using the word Sayana Bharat and Kunti, referring to those people constantly, you know. And so I think that family is very important. And even if they were not perfect parents, for instance, still you always highlight what good you learned from them, right? Whatever good was there. So, Hare Krishna. Anybody got any questions?
I was going to ask you if that is your family, you know, parents.
Well, you've got a mask on, so I can't understand what you're saying.
I have to have the mask because, you know, No, I was going to ask you if that was your mother and father on the
Oh,
map.
yes, it is. Yes, definitely it is. There's no coffee in here, by the way.
Thank you for all those points, Mars. It's really nice, and especially that one of those last points you made from text 36 about how your enemies will scorn your abilities and say harsh words. Could that be more painful for you? And Krishna is really questioning Arjuna, and it seems like devotees sometimes, we're meant to be peaceful, happy, always encouraging others, but sometimes when you actually receive chastisement by someone that you respect greatly, this can actually sober one up and help one, traverse whatever obstacles in their mind that's coming up. I just thought of that when you said those statements.
Well, the role Arjuna was asking for it. He said, okay, you're my guru. I'm your shishya, you're my guru. So lay it on. Tell me what I need to hear. I'll take it. And I'll listen at least. I'll take it like a man, as they say sometimes. So yeah, we have to be prepared. You won't learn unless you get a little chastisement. Parents raise their voice to their children, and if they don't, they will never learn. So yeah, it's necessary. So that's why Krishna gets a little stern a few times in the Gita. And as Prabhupada put it once, he said, "You're fool number one, Arjuna. You're a fool." Could have said you're an idiot. You're an idiot right now. It doesn't make any sense.
Please feel free to chastise all of us, Maharaj, me especially, whenever something comes up.
Well, sure, I can't see what you're doing, but I think as long as you're being a proper father and a husband and human being, then you're doing okay. Prabhupada would expect us to be gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. He just wants us to be perfect ladies and gentlemen. And that just doing that alone is very big time preaching, to the public and to your dependents. Like say, for instance, with your children, when you've got a young one, you want to give them a lot of love and make Krishna to be very attractive. And when they get a little bit more independent, you want that to continue, that Krishna is the sweetest thing that ever could exist in the world. And if you come across too hard and crass to the young ones, they'll have maybe a bad experience. So Krishna always has to come across as someone very attractive, and then they'll be able to stay with Krishna. So when you're a parent, you're a teacher, right? So you're automatically a guru. So any questions at all?
Maharaj, I have a question.
Okay.
You have mentioned, very nice, I never thought that tolerance comes from the word truth. Can you give little more so I can think? It's very attractive the way you said it. I never thought about it anywhere.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I never thought about it either. It just slipped out of my mouth.
But it was good. It was very good.
Well, it is. I mean, I think that out of tolerance comes truth, and out of truth comes tolerance. Mm-hmm. Prabhupada was on a plane, and some passengers were extremely rowdy, and Prabhupada's assistant there at the time asked the flight attendant, could you ask the guys to be a little quiet? So they did that. And they quieted down somewhat. But then after some time, they started up again, being loud and boisterous. And I think they even lit up cigarettes, because in those days you could light up a cigarette. in the plains, and then the assistant got even more furious, Prabhupada's servant, and then he was ready to go up and say something to the flight attendant once again, and Prabhupada held him back and said, "No, you at every little provocation," Prabhupada was indicating, at every little provocation, you can't expect everything to be perfect. How can we learn patience and tolerance? So Prabhupada was speaking on behalf of truth and speaking about tolerance. And if you're not, let's say, if you demonstrate tolerance, then you do learn to be detached. You know, instead of trying to chastise other people who may give you trouble, you say, well, that's where they're at. You know, but I'm at a different point in my evolution. But let them be, and in time, they'll understand that they're maybe giving trouble to others, agitating other people unnecessarily. But I'm not here the rod of chastisement. You know, where can I learn tolerance? You know, it's not about me. You know, it's about, you know, what they have to go through for that moment. So tolerance is a great, great virtue. And the winter and summer seasons help us through that. Truth comes from winter and summer, isn't it? Like where you're living right now, it's super hot. You can't do anything about it. You just have to stay in there with your AC on.
Yeah.
So you're learning tolerance. It's a beautiful thing. The weather is training you. The weather is training you. Yeah. And sometimes it gets a little cold there. And that's also another training.
Maharaj, I have another question, not from chapter 2, but chapter 11, just because I like your simple, analytical deliverance is so effective. And I appreciate that.
Oh, you're kind.
It looks like 11.33 that Krishna told to Arjuna that you should get up and fight. I already put them into death. So seems like the result is already in the hand of Krishna.
Yes.
So can I say, can it be relevant to our life also that the result of bhakti is already there, done by Krishna?
Yeah,
it
you
is,
can say
Krishna.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can say that, so you don't have to worry about the end product. The only thing you really need to worry about is put out your best.
Yes.
Put out your best effort. Fight the best you can. Produce pick as many mangoes as you can. You know, whatever obligation. You know, put out as many cars you can put out on the assembly line. Put as many out as just do your best. You know, and conduct yourself well. And that's it. Like, be more attached to the duty. Like I could say about traveling, and I always say this, you know, it's not about getting to the end of the road. It's about enjoying the journey. I think a lot of people haven't got that. They're simply looking to get the check at the end of the week. And this is sad. I would say it's actually sad. You mean you didn't enjoy work at all? You mean you didn't enjoy you didn't get any juice out of interacting with your boss or with your clients or your customers? You didn't pick up on anybody's smiles as a result of your product? You mean it's all just about getting the money so you can party at the end? Gee, what a glum life.
I love that. So you are trying to say that there should not be any complaint about Krishna consciousness practice. It's all joyful. We should relish.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Chant and be happy.
That's wonderful. Thank you. It's a
Yeah,
wonderful.
we never hear anybody saying chant and be miserable. Or we can use the term serve and be happy. Do save and be happy. So that's what Krishna's trying to say. Look at this great opportunity. Look what you got. You got all these people to fight with. Wow, look at them. They're armed, they're great, and you're well equipped. You're well programmed and trained. Wow, come on. People would die for this.
Yeah.
Excuse me, fun. People would die for this opportunity.
Yeah.
I was just,
Yes.
I saw it this morning, perhaps you, Bruce. There's that one man who wore a special suit to get swallowed by an anaconda. Yeah.
Out.
He lived, he survived. I don't know how he pulled out, but some people will say it was cruel to the snake, but like he was like chivalrous. Like, let's go for it. Just go for the rough stuff. Evil Knievel, daredevil. I think that, a lot of people, their life is kind of dull and they don't like just going to the factory or going to the office. But I think the joy is in the product, what you produce. And the joy is in your interaction with the people.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And if you can make them happy in the course of your day, then they love you. They love you.
That's true. Thank you. That was wonderful.
And people lack gratitude. They really do. They don't think, I've got a job. They don't think, they're very much lacking in that strong attitude of being grateful. Because some people are not working, they're out of a job. They have no engagement. I've got engagement. Wow, yay. Most people know that, people with psychological problems or mental imbalances, a lot of it has to do with the fact they're not engaged enough. So if you have some engagement, some work, you should rejoice,
Yes. Thank you.
So I'll have to go now because we have another class. I see Gopi there. Hare Krishna.
Just one more question, Maharaj.
Okay.
Okay, so there is one comment which is Vegavati Mataji writes from YouTube saying she also was wondering what was on the cup. But anyway, she already knows. And Sankalpa Mataji has a question.
She was asking about the cup.
Vegavati Mataji, she is watching on the YouTube.
Oh yeah.
So Sankalpa Mataji has a question. Do you have?
Okay. All right.
Just very quick. Can you hear me, Maharaj?
I can hear you. Yes.
Here in the Lachar community, we have a prayer circle. So it's a group of devotees, 10 or 12, and I'm in that circle too. So we pray for devotees that are in distress or that are in a difficult situation, have to make a decision, or any kind of, emergency situations, or somebody's dying. So we pray for them. And we had a meeting and we were all wondering, what are we praying for? When shall we pray? And according to the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, if somebody leaves the body, for example, or somebody is very sick, and everybody around them gets very worried and don't want to miss them, don't want them to leave the body and leave a hole behind in their environment. So we were wondering, is there really no room for lamentation, no room for missing somebody and wishing somebody not to leave and to actually stay around?
So your question is there no room for lamentation? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I know Arjuna was in a very extreme position. He had to really, it was like the whole world was looking at this fight, and he couldn't just pull out, and so Krishna was explaining. But for the rest of us, so we are praying that somebody gets better, that somebody will not leave the body. These are our prayers. So sometimes we are conflicted with the philosophy of not lamenting when somebody goes.
Oh, yeah. So your question is, how does that apply to not lament for the living or the dead?
Yeah, should we not pray?
Yeah, yes, no. I mean, there's different forms of prayer. It's a big topic.
Yeah.
Vandanam is one of the 9 processes of devotional service. And there are different kinds of prayers. There are prayers in the mode of goodness, prayers of passion, prayers in ignorance. And we have certain styles of prayers that some of our great acharyas have set through the bhajans that we sing. We can get some kind of direction from them. Yeah, there's room for prayer. Prayer means communication with Krishna, right? And so that's encouraged in the bhakti movement, in our bhakti community. But I think that some prayers that we might, that are very powerful are like what I've seen devotees of fashion prayers, like the case of Bhaktimarga Swami. My Lord, if you so desire, please, I mean, it's Krishna's at the top consideration. If you so desire, please please protect our dear devotee or something like that. My dear Lord, if you so desire, allow us to distribute so many books, blah, blah, blah. So Krishna becomes the most important factor. If we pray kind of selfishly, I think it's a diminished form of prayer. I think you have to look at the quality of prayer. I think that's really important. Look at some people will even pray to God, God, please do something about this person. If you don't do something, I will. I'm coming. So some people, I would say, I mean, it's really a big topic. We spend hours on it. I think we take examples. Prayers by Akura are all in praise of Krishna, and that's fine. But sometimes what's meaningful for devotees is that we pray on behalf of our loved ones, family, friends, teachers, and so on. I don't see anything really wrong because the sentiment is right. So there's a time for it. But the point here is that what Krishna's trying to say is this is not the time for this. Your timing is off. You're lamenting. He was making the strong point, you should not lament for the living or the dead, because that is the spirit of a kshatriya to be able to do his or her work, right? So, and for the above mentioned reasons, what we had gone through before, you should not lament because of this and that and this and that, all the philosophical reasons. So we just have to continue on. Don't become emotional and don't stay in grievance forever, carry on. I think there's the right timing for grieving and praying and crying. And some people need to take a little longer stretch at it than others. And we should allow devotees to have those feelings. I know it's a broad topic. I don't know if I addressed your question appropriately, but I know sometimes devotees can be a little bit coarse and say, oh, you don't have to, cry over anybody or lament. There's no need to. So are we going the right direction?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, yeah, Krishna so desires because
you so desire.
we'll have
It's how you put it. It's how you place the words. It's very, that makes it very significant. Makes all the difference how you word it.
Thank you, Maharaj.
There are some really good prayers out there, not just amongst the devotees, but by other people out there. They understand quite well. But I think we should go for quality prayer. And some of the best examples are the kind of message that comes through from Prahlad. Oh, my father was not such a good man, but I still want him to be in a good place. So, Lord Nrsimhadev, can you please do look after him? You know, just wishing well everybody. I think we need to also look at our own prayer, which is called the Maha Mantra. And I pass out a mantra card to people that I meet. And this is how I translate it, because not everybody understands the particular devotee definition. So here's one that I use. The definition for the Maha Mantra. And I go like this: "Oh, awesome creator, allow me to be of blissful service to you and the world." You know, that's how I translate the Maha Mantra for some people. All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Give my regards to Debala
Okay.
and also to, who else do we have? Lalita Gopi. She's there. Haribol. And
Haribol.
we'll continue tomorrow or next week on Thursday at 5 p.m. with the second half of chapter 2. All right?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you.
Jai
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
So we will see everyone next week, the same time, same link.
Okay. Haribol.